And
ouch, they are hot. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
This is my first podcast as a 40-year-old.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you were old.
I'm so old. And for those of you
so young.
For those South people, the church is decorated with my picture everywhere, which is, yeah.
Oh, we should have gotten pictures to put into the stream because it would have been fun. So, yeah, our some of our staff decided it would be a glorious idea, and I agree, to make photos of Alex
with little
like
quotes,
awkward
things that I say all the time.
They took screenshots of like awkward moments when he's preaching, like, and then like things like that, and then put little quotes about it and party hat and stuff. So that's all over the church. That's fun.
Yeah. So, but where are we going today before we ramble too much? Like, well,
and then we can ramble later.
Yeah, we can ramble
Perfect.
later.
So today on the show, like we always do, we're evaluating or reviewing. Sorry, evaluating. We're going to evaluate. We're going to give you a grade.
Yes.
No, we're going to review
C plus for effort.
what Alex preached on Sunday. But the subjects that we're going to sort of go through today are, what's my purpose in life?
Mm-hmm.
So like, probably one of the most fundamental human questions every generation's ever asked. We're going to solve it for you today on the show.
I love it.
Please stick around.
If you don't know what your purpose is,
we are going to solve that for you. All right, no promises.
It's like a buzzword for podcasts. Find your purpose in life. We're just going to put that on the thing, and people are like, ooh, we're going to go look at that.
Maybe that should be our title for this week.
Yeah.
Find your purpose in life. All right. But that part of that is like, so if a good purpose should probably involve, what am I supposed to be doing with my days? Who am I supposed to be connected with or belonging? Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be a part of a group of people doing some stuff. And then identity, like, what's my specifics in that bigger scheme? I want to be connected to something big. I also want to be connected with some community. So you talked about purpose, belonging, identity. We're going to talk about those things.
And you might even say identity, belonging, purpose. Like what rests on which is like a question that I have. Like, if you have purpose, does that answer all your needs? And we talked just briefly, like, are those the basic needs? Well, there are some things that are talked about as basic needs just to live. Like, you need food, you need water, you need shelter, like good old Maslow with his hierarchy of needs. And he would put sort of some of that, like, purpose maybe under, what is it, self-actualization or something like that.
It's like one of the top tier ones.
Yeah.
Do we agree with that? All of these things, these are the fun conversations
and that was one of the things I wrestled with, like, to what degree are these Western things?
Gosh, that's so hard. Yeah.
But at the same time, when Jesus comes to Peter and says, Peter, you're no longer going to fish for fish, you're now going to fish for people. He's tapping somewhere into the fact that Peter has shelter, he has food, maybe he's eking out a living, he has some sense of community, he's probably married, all those different things. There's still, even for Peter, first century, like, still something, some angst. And
so in other words, translation, we totally disagree with you, Maslow.
Yeah, Maslow, we're coming for you.
No,
I'm
just joking.
No, so he's right. On one level, like, if you can't eat, do those things matter? No.
Yeah. What's my purpose in life? My purpose is to find food today.
Yeah, and that's been interesting. Like, that language comes all through the New Testament around what it is to share the message of Jesus. Don't go to a guy who's starving, hungry, and be like, "Hey, God bless you. May God speak to you." All those different things. Like, feed the guy. That's James' language of, like, just don't.
So
just
we
ignore.
do agree with you, Maslow. Good job.
Yeah, Maslow, you were right after all.
So now that you guys are all clear on how the stance we're going to take throughout the whole conversation,
Maslow was right.
We can dive in. But before we dive in, we have to meander for just a moment and say we have some property.
We have some property. We made.
It's not too weak.
It's not too weak. PG tips.
PG tips.
Classic.
In the fancy kettle. Teapot. Sorry, I keep saying kettle.
It's not a kettle.
It's not a kettle.
If
you do not put this on the stove. If you do, it will blow up. So I don't know. And
so if you're watching, you can see. If you're not, you're going to have to just imagine.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're doing the visual thing.
And I just wish, for those of you that do listen on podcast, you could see just how small this delicate china teacup looks with Aaron holding it. It's like he's a giant. Just, expecting the thing to explode just from his fingertip grip any moment. Whereas I just look very refined and very.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
all right.
We are officially drinking tea.
Yes.
And talking theology.
Indeed.
And Jesus.
So just so that people, I know that all of our listeners were there on Sunday, 100% of them, and they were all dialed in. They remember everything you said.
Detail, yeah.
But even though they remember everything you said on Sunday, I think you should do some review.
I
What
think
did you preach on?
So we wanted to talk through just over the next few months at South, we're going to be unpacking a vision. In midst of conversations of staff, of elders of these different groups, we're really going to push into why is South here? What are we trying to create here? Now we are the Church of Jesus. That's just, we're not better than any other church. We're just in that story. But there is something distinct we're called to do, and figuring that out somewhat requires being intentional about the community God has placed you in. For whatever reason, vision is both contextual, it's like spatial, and it's contextual. So we are here in Littleton. Doesn't mean we don't have a global platform to a degree through all the things that we support, but we're here in this city, and it's this moment. It's 2022. It's like now. So asking, how do we work to create something for this place? How do we be the Church of Jesus for this place, and how do we create that is important. And that changes, based on, you go to a very intellectual community, you have a church right down the road from a big university or college, you're probably going to tap into more of an intellectual way of thinking, perhaps, or at least recognize that need.
Yeah.
And the level that people converse at, than if you move to rural America and in a town that had a foundry, but that closed, and now everyone works at Walmart, and there's just a different approach. And so just asking, well, what are we doing here? And that really requires, to me, listening to what's the angst. So we called this series Crisis.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, like, crisis is what they see. They look at the world and they're like, yeah, I almost want to get out. I'm going to buy, how many couples do you know that have that conversation? I'm going to buy 20 acres in Montana. And we're just
homesteading.
Go. Yeah, well, let's homestead.
Buy some goats.
It's just that easy. Just grow some crops. How hard can it be?
Goats.
Yeah.
Goat cheese.
I grew kale this year. I could eat kale, I guess.
Yeah.
That'd be all I had, but I could eat kale right now.
That sounds like a terrible existence.
Unripe tomatoes. So there is this angst, and you hear it in people's conversations. I'm not sure how to deal with what's out there, almost, and maybe I don't even know what that is. So with all of the social issues, what I tried to do is try to take them and broadly put them down to three big concepts. A lot of the tensions we see come out of these big three areas. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I fit. And I don't know what my purpose is. And so when you hear about a crisis, when you hear about something that's happened, when you hear about people sort of expressing anger, whether in a group or individually, when you listen under the surface, it's usually one of those three things that come up. I'm very lost as a person. I don't have a good community of people. Or that community of people has pushed me in a bad direction. And I don't know what day-to-day life, why it matters. Why should I keep going? And I get that question a lot, actually, bizarrely, as a pastor. And I actually had conversations around that subject before this series, just in the last week or two, with one person in their 70s, one person in their 20s. Just what's the purpose? Why am I even here? Those are real felt needs for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And we tend to...
Not for us, though. We've got it all figured out.
Yeah, we tend to assume that maybe that's just a Western 21st century thing, but it's really not. It seems like it's older than that. So we began with this story in Genesis chapter 4, this first book of the Bible, this character Cain, the first murderer, who expresses some of those existential angst in the midst of his sort of conversation with God. It's centered around, you've cast me from your presence. Who am I? I'm going to be a restless wanderer. Where do I belong? I have no community anymore. And whoever finds me will kill me. My life is going to be short and meaningless. What's the point?
And your point in the message is like, these same existential crises have been happening since the beginning. Basically since the fall of man. Before
people were even consistently writing down stories, when they were still telling oral traditions.
What was that passage again?
Genesis chapter 4.
Genesis 4.
Before they were doing that. So if you're listening online, not watching,
that's fine.
Genesis chapter 4, you can find. But further down, keep going, and maybe go back up because you missed it. Up. There we go. Somewhere there.
All right, let's see if I can even pull it in here.
Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven," it's moving screens on me, "you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive, a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." That's all of those existential angsts just in one passage.
Yeah, this is a soul in crisis.
Yeah.
And it's scary how familiar it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
my own voice, to other voices I've heard. Yeah. So we promised at the beginning that we were going to solve all the things. So can you do that real quick?
Yeah, and so Jesus, and we kind of reverse the order. It would make more sense in some ways to go identity, belonging, and then purpose. We're going purpose, belonging, and identity, and part of that was just where it fit in with our rhythm of church and what we were talking about as a way to respond. But we began with purpose, and we'll get to question whether all of purpose falls apart when you lose a place to belong and when you lose identity. What's the point knowing your purpose if you don't have a community of people to do that within? And how does community help if you've lost your sense of identity? Maybe they start to feel a little shakier. So we'll get to that. But in terms of purpose, where we started this week was simply the idea that Jesus' answer to purpose seems to be locked in his story and being immersed in that. I think in the 21st century West, we maybe hope our story holds up by itself. And I think Jesus wonders if it does. So when he invites...
Yeah, explain that more.
Well,
right,
take Peter, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Peter is this first follower, one of Jesus' first followers. He has a boat. He can catch fish. He has a family. He has a community.
So he's got
Maslow's bottom level.
Yeah, bottom level.
But when Jesus invites him alongside, it's like you're no longer going to be fishing for fish. You're going to be fishing for people. And for some reason, to Peter, that's compelling. That's like, I want to get involved in that.
So compelling that he almost he risks the lower level of Maslow's.
Yeah.
For those, let's just quick do a brief explanation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like
I've explained everything that I know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so you can run because that's I got self-actualization and that's all
I don't have all the tiers.
You don't.
No, I don't have those memorized.
There are tiers.
So basically, it's this idea that there's a sociologist, philosopher. I can't remember.
Sociologist,
probably sociologist. Anyway, he just defines that there's like, in order for a human being to thrive, there's a hierarchy of needs for them to get to the maximum level of thriving in one sense or another. And until one level's achieved, the other level is kind of irrelevant.
So here we go.
Okay, you got them.
Physiological needs, air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. Safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, property, love and belonging. So we're starting to tap into some of that language. Friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection.
That's level 2?
That's level 3.
Oh, okay.
Level 4, esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. Self-actualization, desire to become the most that one can be. Which is right. That's the purpose thing, I think. It's like, it's maybe all of them.
Your list actually sprinkles pretty vertically aside from maybe the very bottom one, right? And so So in one sense, like to say, I want to find my purpose, that's a pretty high level. Like you're probably eating okay and sheltered pretty well if you're asking that next question. But what you were just saying, it's super fascinating, is purpose is so powerful that Peter's willing to risk a lower level.
Yes.
Like he stops fishing.
Yeah. And gives up the boat.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like he's risking a lower level of
and you
these
see that
needs.
a couple of times. There's a couple of stories in the Bible that have that tendency. Elisha chops up his plow and just says, I'm going off to follow this prophet. And I'm going
Burn the ships,
yeah,
right?
I'm gonna go do my thing.
Wow.
So there are those pieces
So would you say
language.
that the invitation of the scriptures is to tap into such a powerful purpose and meaning that it actually overrides all of these other things?
It seems whether it's meant to or not, the story seems to do that. And I think what we tend to do, maybe 21st century Western people, is look back a few hundred years and say something like, oh, all they cared about was just surviving and having enough to eat then. And yet it seems like people were staring at the stars and dreaming of getting there before they ever knew that they could build rocket ships.
Totally.
That something in us pulls on like, there's more.
It's almost like God
eking out a
created
living.
us this way.
If anything, now I think in some of our minds, and we'll maybe get to this further on, is there's almost a reversal. Like I want to stop driving towards all those things, and I wish I could go back to just homesteading, growing crops like that. There's some interesting psychological thing going there. Like I almost want to opt out a little bit is some of the feeling, and maybe there's some dishealth to how we approach some of these things, but that feels like it could be a rabbit trail. But
yes,
somewhere
it does,
there's almost
it does feel like it could be
the people that had to homestead longed for something more, and now the people that theoretically have more long to go back to homesteading, which is just
which actually says you can find meaning and purpose, but if it's not the right one,
it's got to fit you.
It's got to fit you, and it's got to be big enough to satisfy something in your humanity, which is why so much of the world is dissatisfied with their life. Is because they may have defined their purpose. My purpose is to make the most money, and then they get there and they've made a lot of money, and they're like, or my purpose is to have a massive family, or my purpose is to, like, you can name it really good things, like solve world hunger. And that sounds glorious and beautiful and magical, right? And then, like, it's got to be even bigger than some of these things.
So what I tried to do the rest of the summer was actually reclaim this word that gets used a lot, this word compassion, because it's got both a corporate, you have to do this message within the texts, and then it's got an individual application as well. And so compassion in an Old Testament understanding is wombness is maybe the only way you can say it. I don't even know if
say it
that's
like an American womb.
Wombness.
Wombness.
I don't know.
It's just a hard word to say.
It is, yeah. But it is the feeling of carrying a baby within you. It's that care and compassion that is wells up in a mother. And you and I, but you've just had a child. Or your wife has.
And I've had so much wombness.
So much wombness, maybe, I don't know. but my wife is just pregnant. Laura thinks about that baby all the time. Whereas to me, the baby is still a hypothetical, although real presence. It's like, eventually it's going to be in the air and out in the world, and that's going to change a lot. But right now I can go hours without thinking about that. Whereas Laura can't. Like, there's constant little reminders. So there's a feeling, a movement, and you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Jesus, interestingly, picks up this word, albeit in Greek, not Hebrew, and talks about what it is to follow him. He chooses to demand that his followers be compassionate as God is compassionate. And in the midst of a big conversation around whether the emphasis was on being holy as God was holy or being compassionate as God was compassionate, and almost everybody picking the other one, Jesus comes and lands on compassion. And a lot of that might be just the way that holiness had become to be understood, because I think actually there's no problem being both holy as God is holy and compassionate as God has been compassionate, other than our inability to do either well, but they're not mutually exclusive. You can chase after both.
Yes.
But for the first century teacher of the law, they've become competing narratives. And holy had come to essentially to mean pure, and pure essentially meant separate yourself from anybody else who's not pure, to the point that if you see a man lying down on the side of the road who's been beaten and is naked and dying, step over him or around him so you can stay pure. Yeah, that's justice. That's what God would have you to do. So Jesus...
Gosh, man, when you said that, that was actually like, I think you put that in a really interesting way that I hadn't heard anyone say it that way. I mean, I've heard this text a million times.
Yeah, of course.
This is the story of the
Good Samaritan.
Good Samaritan story, right?
The best short story ever told, perhaps.
Yeah, but when you actually, I think you brought it to a new level, that these two other characters, the Levite and the priest, genuinely believed that the godly thing was to leave someone abandoned along the side.
So without being too, I mean, I'm going to be harsh on them, actually. I used the phrase the horror of the passage. It is the same principle as a suicide bomber that crashes a plane into a building and believes he's doing what God told him to do.
Wow.
I mean, it is the same concept. It's now the result may be more tragic, but it is the horror of someone who absolutely believes this is what God would have me to do. My theology, my understanding of God has brought me to such a place that when a man is dying, I step around him and I avoid
in order to please God.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why they killed Jesus, was because he was so adamant about, no, that's not acceptable. Compassion wins. That they're like, yeah, we can't handle you anymore. Let's kill this guy.
Yeah. But because compassion's complicated.
Oh, yeah. Way more complicated.
So much easier to step around the person and believe that you've done the right thing. Wow. Of course, you just leave the person there. The redirect, the energy, the cost to the Samaritan that stops in the story is infinitely higher. Like, so you think about this Samaritan, he encounters a person lying on the side of the road. Is it a ruse? Is it pretend? Is it like a trap? What happens if another good Israelite comes along the moment he's helping this guy, he stood over him, like he seems like the guy that's done the thing? Like, you know, you're in the scene, you're complicit. He maybe gets killed because there's all these different things. He probably doesn't have a ton of resources. He has to expend his resources. There's so many reasons not to do it.
Even though the Samaritans were considered outsiders by the Jews, they still shared certain theological beliefs about purity and stuff.
Yes,
and so he was probably risking some of his own purity status, religiously speaking, like that the other guys were. And on and on and on, and like layers. Then he throws money at it. He throws time at it. He's got to carry this guy, like, with his, on his own animal, all these things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating how those different implications work. I just happened to hear a podcast around the first expedition to the South Pole, and there's these two groups, a British group and a Norwegian group that are racing to get there. And the Norwegian group just outstrips them. They get there so quick. And Amundsen, the guy that led it, is leaving the pole, and he writes a note to Scott that's borderline like, ha, 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 but it's hey, we made it here. This was the day, hope you get home safely type thing. And then he talks about in his diary, I had a couple of cans of fuel that I thought I might leave. I couldn't foresee needing them, but I didn't. And he doesn't really expound on why he didn't, but somewhere it seems like there's this fear that what happens if Scott gets there and then beats him home and gets the victory of getting home first, and then who's telling the true story? Like, who knows? There's just this tension in the text of and it's almost like there's this guy that could be lying on the side of the road, and I wondered if I should help him, but I decided to step over him. Stepping over people is easy, or around them is easy. That ethic is actually easier to live out in some ways.
Okay, so just to connect it back, we started with this statement that we were going to talk about purpose, and I think most of our listeners, at least I do, most of us have probably felt this, what's my purpose? What's my role? So, we're there with you.
Similar, yeah.
Now, compassion, what you're saying is your thesis that engaging in the complexity of compassion is going to scratch that itch for you.
Somewhat. That's not all of it, I don't think. So I would say that Jesus invites us into his story to some degree. That's the purpose. Like that's universal purpose. He would say that's for everybody. It's not for Aaron or Alex. It's for Aaron and Alex. It's not for South, not the church down the road. This is everybody. You're immersed in my story. That's the thing that lifts you up beyond the fish, beyond the local family. Like, that's the self-actualization eventually. So on one hand, that's like universally true coming to the story. Where he gets very combative with his fellow teachers is, and the medium that you do that is compassion. And compassion is a felt thing. It's to be moved by something. Now, where I would stretch that is I would say there are particular the things that move you that might not move me. So there's a purpose in the broader story, but there are things that help that story that you maybe look at and say, oh, yeah, I'm so passionate about that. And some of you guys listening will have seen this. If you know someone that runs a charity of some kind that works in a specific area of care or social justice or something, I'm going to use the word boring. I don't know if it's really what I mean. They can get almost boring around it. Like we've got a good friend, Jeff Brodsky, who comes and teaches at South occasionally. He runs Joy International. We've been able to support them and do things with them. We love what they do. But when you talk with Jeff, if you're not involved in what they're doing, or not them, but that mission of like, we're working to make sure that there aren't kids that have been kidnapped, that are being exploited, that are held in modern day slavery. This is the thing to get involved in. Like, if you're not doing that, what are you doing? Like just get involved. Something inside him has moved. Like, there is this feeling of, no, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And it's not that their expression is bad, but I've got a couple of friends that have been involved in charities like that. Like some around fresh water, some around feeding the poor, orphan care, working against sexual slavery, those types of things. And when you hear them talk, you're like, you feel something for this that I don't feel.
So allow me to play some devil's advocate. And so what if my unique thing is I feel really called to be pure?
And I guess the question becomes like...
And I just want really ridiculously good theology, and I want to be holy.
Yeah.
And that's what moves me.
And maybe that's not okay for you, not bad for you. I don't know. Like, what's the problem with that comes when it competes against where somebody else is lying on the road and needs your help. And Jesus says that ethic trumps everything. Jesus seems to say, when you find a person on the side of the street, I don't care how you want to be, this is what you do. Like, this is an ethic that I'm setting in place. And somewhere that should be the compassion that has been had for us, that God has had on us, should drive us to do the same for others.
Yeah, so now I'll flip the script back on myself, and I think that part of what you're saying is accurate theology that doesn't include the most robust perspective of compassion towards other people and towards God's creation, even, is not accurate theology.
Yes. Yeah.
So, like, if you're just trying to get all of the ideas right and be super, super holy, if compassion, like a robust theology of compassion, isn't part of that, then you are not even achieving your own goal. But
at the same time, it's okay to be passionate about the theology.
Totally.
There's people that sit reading books.
Totally.
That they love to study. I love books. I mean, I got more books than I could possibly read. Like, they stack up. And someone recently said to me, "Have you read my book I gave you?" And I'm like, it's somewhere on the list. I've got books that I'll get to 2 years after I buy them. Like this, they dwarf me in terms of piles. So that's fine. To take that as a specific example, it seems like Jesus says you can be passionate about that thing, but that doesn't mean that you can wander past someone on the side of the road reading a book. Like, somewhere there's a thing that trumps that. My big ethic of compassion is care for the person that needs care.
Yeah.
So somewhere there's almost a movement to me of Jesus invites us into his story. It gives this bigger purpose. And it demands that the medium that we live that out through is compassion. When we're picking holiness, purity, all those different things versus compassion, we're missing the point. Compassion has to move us. We have to be able to catch hold of God's heart for this world and for people in it. He phrases that in the book Jonah. There's this moment where he says to Jonah, like, Jonah doesn't care if he's honest, preaches the worst sermon ever known, like, repent or bad stuff will happen.
Yeah. And the only reason he preached that was because he was swallowed by a fish and almost died. And then he's like, fine, I'll preach the sermon.
Yeah, it's a comic.
Repent, guys.
Tale. Yeah, repent.
Like, that's his sermon.
So you just, I'm done. And then he looks and everyone repents and he's like, see, I told you.
This is what I was worried about. I knew you were compassionate.
Yeah, he almost gets to, I'm such a good preacher. I knew they'd respond anyway. but there's this moment where he responds that way and God says, and shouldn't I be moved for a city of 120,000 people that don't know their left hand from their right? They don't know Jonah. They're so lost and so messed up and there's so much history, baggage, culture, whatever it is. There's so much brokenness. Shouldn't I be moved? And shouldn't you be moved by implication is really where the story goes.
And then the story just magically ends. It's like this cliffhanger, Jonah turned the corner.
He actually ends, and many cattle. It's just the bizarrest ending. Like, 120,000 men and many cattle.
Yeah, like the boat repents. Like,
Narrative.
It's just a magical. Anyway, we're not in Jonah.
We're not in Jonah.
New sermon series eventually. But
there is this movement of compassion there. So there's this movement into invitation into purpose.
So
there's this compassion that is required to live out that story well. But then there is, I think, this invitation into, and what moves you in the story? What aspects of it? What things how do you come to play your part? So for me, teaching was a thing I did with some trepidation the first time, really bummed out the first time I did it, just thought I was going to speak for 15 minutes, spoke for 4, just done, nothing else to say. Second time, certainly better, but quickly after 3 or 4 reps, I was like, this is like breathing to me. When I have those moments where the room is like, we're listening, we're leaning in, we're excited about this big Jesus story, we're learning, we're having aha moments, bells are hopefully not alarm bells, but bells are ringing, like things are connecting for us. That was a thing I was like, I have to do this. I can't not do this. This compels me. Doesn't give me a get out of general compassion, but it does mean that something has moved me. Compassion.
It may shape the content that you preach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which it did on Sunday, which is a great example of how compassion shaped Alex is the way he preached Sunday is to raise that banner and say, this is what's important.
But compassion in the strict sense of the thing that moves you, or the something that moves you as a listener, and something that moves you, Aaron, and something that moves Alex, something that grabs hold of us. And another way that the New Testament seems to phrase that is Paul will talk about the grace that was given to me to do this. Like the grace that was given to me for these churches. He talks about it in terms of giving the grace that was given you to offer this gift. Somewhere the similar, maybe different language, but a similar emphasis on, it's almost like calling, it's almost like sense of individual coming out into the broader purpose. What is it that you love? Which is interesting, you talked about the week before, and it's not singing.
Yeah.
You're a worship leader who the compassion thing is not just singing.
Yeah. We could get into that as a separate thing. But yeah, like singing is definitely could be under the umbrella of my passion, which is why I've continued to do it. But there's almost no way we could go into a deep dive of this, but I just had this interesting thought pop in my head when you were mentioning Paul and his calling, because he has a really complex compassion or in his soul. Because when you read in some of the spots, like in Romans, he says, I kind of wish I could be doing this preaching thing to the Jews. Like he has this like stirring. I would give my life.
Yeah.
He says he has the idea. I would almost give up my salvation if the Jews could get this. And yet his calling was to the Gentiles.
That's fascinating.
Weird. What's going on there emotionally for this guy who almost has a compassion for both, but then God is uniquely...
Yeah.
Basically, they kicked him off a donkey and said, dude, you're going to the Gentiles, whether you like the Jews or not.
And fascinating in that, like, first he tries to go to Jews to start with. And secondly, this other character, Peter, that he references, he'll say something like, the same calling that was given to Peter for the Jewish people was given to me for the Gentiles. And you're like, shouldn't that be flipped? Like Paul, totally. Jew of Jews, so intelligent, like Pharisee, all these different terms. Peter, kind of ordinary fisherman that's doing his thing with some angst about the whole Jewish story, perhaps.
Yeah.
You're like, you'd make such a good Gentile region. Like,
Yeah.
but
So what's up with that?
but I wonder. So firstly,
So was Paul's passion and conviction actually for the Jews, and Jesus is like, no, you've screwed up so many times that your punishment is to go to the Gentiles?
so firstly, we don't see the end of the story. Like,
Totally.
we don't get to see what Paul says at the end, maybe, which we just have to imagine. Like, why? Like for me, a similar thing is I actually have had no desire in my life for almost all of it that I can recollect, and I'm saying this pretty honestly, to be a lead pastor. Just actually wasn't something I wanted to do. Love teaching, but I felt like it was a calling, but not something. So it moved me, but it wasn't something that I was like, oh, well, this would be so fun. Can you imagine what it would be like to do that? Like, there's certain aspects that are involved in my job that I could take or leave.
Yeah.
And actually probably by preference leave.
Yeah.
And I get to do that with a couple of things, but there's quite a few things that I have to say yes to that I would rather not say yes to.
So what part of, where's purpose and what's up with that? What's going on there?
So somewhere it's trust, right? Because somewhere into all of that we'll see comes identity, comes belonging. What is my gift to the community? How do I live for the community in such a way that the community gets what it needs from me and I get what I need from my community? How does who God has made me shape that? How does knowing I belong to him, that I'm not my own, that I was bought with a price, how does that shape that? So somewhere compassion isn't just this is me getting to do what I want to do.
Gosh, I think if you didn't hear that, I think that's really important, and I think people will feel that in a lot of ways. Like I feel that. I mean, I preached about it a little bit.
Yeah.
You feel that. Peter seems to, or Paul seems to have felt that. So if the only question you've had about purpose and identity is, do I feel like I'm everything I want to be and I'm getting to do only the thing I want to do?
Yeah.
If that's your only evaluation of whether you're on purpose,
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a potential for a whole bunch of people that when we talk about purpose, we hear happiness.
Or convergence of every part of me and this piece of my story and that piece, they all have a perfect spot in why I'm doing what I'm doing today with this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing.
There's definitely some sacrifice to purpose. I wrote my thesis on this guy that went to India at 30 years old, never came back, died at 72. So he started to talk about himself as Indian, not British, after he'd lived longer in India than he had in England. And as he reflected on some of those things, he uses language like I was worn out in the calling, but not worn out of it. Like I was God was wearing me out. God was using me. He'd found purpose. There's a guy I've talked about in Romania, a guy I would call a friend, but really is more of an acquaintance. He's probably fair, but he felt this purpose calling to surrender some of his home to homeless people. So he essentially just said, he went out to the street in Romania. The state pension was getting so tight that really older people were making a choice between food and shelter. So he said, I'm going to take the shelter concern away from them. So he said, you worry about your food, I'm going to provide shelter. And then he realized there were some of them that didn't have pensions. So he went from 3 that he gathered, and he said this was really like him praying and asking God. And this story appeared on the news, and he just said that felt to me like a compulsion. It felt like walking down the side of the street and seeing a man lying there. It was a compassion decision.
Yeah.
And so he into his house of 4, his house with 4 bedrooms, he takes these 3 other people and surrenders the fact his kids can no longer come back and stay in their rooms when they come back from college or whatever those decisions are. And now he has 200 people living with him in this complex series of structure. 50 of them have huge mental health issues, which in Romania, they just don't have a system for dealing with well. And he does the best he can. So he'll say, I'll go to a wedding, and they'll say, I'm feeding 100 people. This is the food. And he said, I'll have panic attacks because I'm like, we feed twice that number 3 times a day. And this is a lot of food. So he just said, I said to the guys, like, just don't tell me how much it costs. I've got faith to believe it, so long as I don't know the details. God provides. The number of times people have turned up with huge boxes of meat just on the day that we needed it. I've seen provision after provision. But I asked him once, I said, Varel, if you had known it would look like this, would you have started? When you're in that moment of like surrendering your 4-bedroom house, would you have started this? And he just looked at me with laughter and tears, and he said, "Oh no."
Not
he said,
chance.
"No." He said, "No way." He said, "You know the story of the frog. If you put it into boiling water, it'll jump out instantly. It's a self-preservation mechanism. If you put it into cold water and turn up the heat, it will let you boil it to death because it can't tell the temperature's changing." And he just looked at me. He said, "I'm the frog, and God is boiling me to death."
Wow.
But
all right, we're doing terrible marketing for purpose.
But he's found it. This is what he believes he was made to do.
So, yeah.
And there is joy in every aspect of this guy. It's incredible. Like, he is alive. So I'm not underselling it. Like, there are these moments where he tells the story where he's like, whoa, but he is alive in a way that very few people are alive. There is something happening there.
Yeah, it's like, would you rather get to the end of your life and you're like, I had this perfect structure and everything made sense and I had safety and security and retirement and it all was beautiful and perfect and my soul is completely empty and I'm a walking corpse of a soul.
Yeah.
Or do you want to like live on the bleeding edge of life and be a little bit terrified all the time because you don't know what God's up to, and
that's the risk.
Faith, but you are fully alive and you're exactly what God is asking to be.
So Michael Mann in his 2004 movie Collateral has this Tom Cruise character is going around actually assassinating people, but he kind of co-ops this taxi driver, forces him to help him, and it's Jamie Foxx plays the taxi driver. They're driving around and Tom Cruise notices this picture that he's got up on his dashboard. And it's Island Limousines. He's going to open this limousine company. And he talks about it all the time, tells his friends about it. He's like, this is going to happen. This is going to be my big thing. Like, and Tom Cruise is like, so how much money you got saved for it? Like, when are you going to make it happen? Like, how's it going to happen? Goes through all these different things. And he's like, you're never going to do this. Like, this is just something you keep telling yourself so you can keep doing the thing that you hate doing every day. And then he says something close to, there's no point me killing you. You're already dead. And it's just like, what?
Man.
Like, it's just, I mean, it's brutal. Now, is there a guy that can drive the taxi every day and be alive? Absolutely.
Probably.
Yeah.
But not this one.
But what Tom Cruise says is this is killing you. And it's the same story as the person that tells you next year I'm going to quit my job and travel around the world. Are they ever going to, how many of them go and travel around the world? Tiny fraction. But there is a narrative you can tell yourself so you can keep doing the thing that you hate doing.
Wow.
And so what you see with Varel is he's not doing that. He's fully alive. Is it hard? Oh man, yes. Does it require some terrible decisions? Yeah. Does it require a weight sometimes on him that sometimes he'd like to lay aside? Definitely. But he is not telling stories like, oh yeah, next year I'm going to start Island Limousines, or next year I'm just going to drop it all and travel around the world. He is living. He's alive.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And somewhere that's the invitation to find.
And this is part of the way of Jesus is counterintuitive in so many ways. Like you find meaning and purpose in life and joy and all of these things in some counterintuitive ways, in a lot of ways. Any final thoughts? Like, so you have listeners, and even just talking to you about this now, it's like there's stuff that's invading my heart.
Yeah.
It's like that's heavy,
but
also beautiful.
I think the fascinating thing I would land on is probably this. One, first, there's a cost to some of those things. I'm doing what I feel like I'm called to do. There's definitely been some costs. I moved away from family, all those different things. There's costs. So sometimes to choose the easy, there's the famous poet. Is it Robert? It's Robert Frost. Like two roads diverge in a wood.
Oh yeah.
And both of them beautiful roads. I picked the road less traveled, and he ends with that, and that's made all the difference. With this tension of like, what do you mean all the difference? Do you mean you made the wrong choice or the right choice? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you.
man, I gotta go back and read that.
So this, I mean, it's so compelling. It was the thing that pushed me to move to America.
Really?
Yeah. Someone gave it. Someone said to me.
We need a bonus episode.
Yeah, maybe we do. But someone randomly in a service said to me, "I feel like God's saying there's a road less traveled." And I went and looked. I'd never heard this poem before. I went and read it, and just like I'm like, wow, like which do I want? The road I've walked all the time, and yet he says, and I may never get back to that road. And I go and walk pathways in England and landscape and spend time with family, and I'm like, this is a good road. So yeah, story not complete. Maybe Paul would love that poem. I don't know. So there is that split that has a cost and a joy. So for people starting to go through a whole moment of, am I island limousines? Am I just waiting to die? Am I just doing the thing that I feel like I have to do? There is a cost. And sometimes the right choice is to say, no, I'm going to stay on this road. And that may be a great choice, and you're not going to get to know. And then I think we as followers of Jesus in this world tend to be very binary. So I'll occasionally have people say to me something like, I've got this money and I'd kind of like to buy a new couch, but I'm thinking about giving it away. Or I'd like to buy a new car and I'm thinking about giving it away. Or I'm some tension, and money quite often is at the center of it. Somewhere we feel, I think we've got to make a decision and it's got to be the right one. And God will be happy with us if we choose the right one. And he'll be mad at us if we choose the wrong one. And so it's like, for us, it's fraught with, oh man, do I give away the money? Do I give away the money? Do I give away the money? Do I give away? And that's not how it's supposed to work. Like the point of grace and the point of a journey with Jesus is he's with you as you're at the fork in the road figuring it out. And he's still with you as you walk the road that may not have been the perfect choice. And somehow he has a way of redeeming things and bringing roads back into your life when you didn't expect them to. And he has a way of making wrong choices, right choices. You think about Paul's choice to kill Stephen. Like, is that the right road? Absolutely not. Does God redeem it somehow? Absolutely he does. That's why we get Paul telling us things like, I'm the chief of sinners. I am more broken than any of you.
Because I made stupid decisions.
Because I did terrible things. And so somewhere we get fraught with, I wish I could just get to the end of the road and have made all the right choices. And I think God's perspective is, no, that's not the right process. And even for the priest and our pals, the priest and the Levite, is there a possible redemption story? Can there be a moment where they tell a story of one time I stepped over this guy and I've never stepped over another guy since? Oh, absolutely there can be.
Yeah.
So
it's helpful to remember that the compassion that we want, that Alex is challenging our community and any of our listeners to have, is the same compassion that God feels towards you and your stupid decisions and the wrong choices you've made. And let that embolden you to start choosing a road at the fork.
And we don't know anything.
We
don't know anything about the guy lying on the side of the road in the story. Like he could have got into an argument that was his fault. He could have attacked somebody else, and no judgment on his story.
Yeah, maybe he's a morally horrible person.
Could be a terrible, but could be the worst. And the implication somewhere unstated in the story seems to me to be, you were once people lying on the side of the road. And I, the storytelling God of the universe, I stopped for you. Now you stop for other people.
Yeah.
And we have ended up on roadsides lying there in the dirt for all sorts of reasons, both our own fault and other people's fault. And we're not judged for it. Jesus stops for us all the time. And we're invited to stop for other people. So
there you go. There's the purpose to your life. It's super clear.
Figure it out.
Super duper easy.
So to land, partner with God. Partner with God, listen to him. Bring other people into the conversation and ask good questions. And know that God is with you as you're making the decision, not just if and when you make the right one.
But all of the ones that God is pushing you and leaning towards you will include compassion.
Definitely.
Towards his world, his kingdom, his people, towards human beings, his creation. And that's it. probably will feel super duper complicated if you're on the right path.
I love that.
Gosh.
Complexity is fun.
Well, I loved this conversation.
This was such a fun conversation. We did a 50 minutes meandering
if I'm
conversation.
honest, I got a little bit like uncomfortable because it was so like there was some conviction there for me, and hopefully for some of you out there. If you've been challenged by this, comment, like, all those sorts of things, share. If you've had moments where you've wrestled with this stuff and you want to post about that in the comment section below, we encourage that, and we'll check in on.
And there's so
comments.
much more we could talk about.
Oh, there's so much
so
more.
much we could just.
But
we'll bring it. And as we talk about belonging and identity, some of this will come out, I'm sure.
Yeah, this will be a subject. It turns out it's a subject that's been circling around the people of God since the very beginning.
Long time.
The chances are we're going to talk about it again in the future here at South and on this show. So, love you all.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.